The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Let's listen as Lorraine LaPointe, coach, therapist, educator, speaker, and founder of Head Heart Synergy, brings together another enlightened guest to inspire and motivate us to move forward, achieve our dreams and desires, so that we experience midlife awakening.
And I'm your host, Lorraine LaPointe. Today we'll enjoy another candid conversation that reveals how to bring back a sense of balance and how to find forward focus. Today, take just a few moments to join us as we explore the possibilities and the perspectives that provide us with greater inner peace, power, passion, and purpose. Because that's what I call living at the edge of fulfillment in a midlife awakening. Well, hello and welcome. And, today's show is kind of is near and dear to my heart, and you'll find out why in just a few minutes. But, if you're avoiding one of these, or if you're having one of these, you most definitely know it. What am I talking about? What I'm talking about is a cringe moment conversation. During those times when tensions are high and strong emotions are just like pumping the adrenaline through your system, and often the participants in these conversations have opposite opinions. You're clashing, you just can't find a common ground, and usually in these conversations the stakes are really high. So unfortunately, when it matters most, we often lose our composure and we show up at our worst. And if you're here today live, I would love to hear just a yes in the chat if you know what I'm talking about, if you understand what I mean by a cringe moment conversation. Because for every person who shows up in our comments, either live or on the replay, you know that we provide, or my company provides, 1 day of fresh water wherever it's needed most in the world. So not only are you helping yourself to shape the show, you're also helping someone in the world have access to fresh water, and you're helping me to make that possible. So let's get back to our discussion. Typically, these kinds of conversations, when they're cringe moments, happen when, for things like we want to end a relationship, and that relationship could be personal or it could be professional, or we need to talk to a coworker who's been really offensive to us in some way, or really hard, giving the boss feedback about their behavior that may not be so complimentary, that's a bit risky. Sometimes these cringe moment conversations happen when we're asked to critique someone's work and it's less than stellar. You know what I mean? Like that. Yeah, I did that a lot as a principal. I had to be honest with teachers and I had to be honest with parents when things weren't going right. So lots of cringe moment conversations. And another time that comes to mind is when we're asked to talk to someone on our team who isn't pulling their weight. They're not doing what they need to do to make things work really well, or they're hoarding information, or they're not sharing resources in a way that makes the team function very well. These are all tough times, and sometimes they even happen when there's a racial or an ethical issue. And I understand that many of my friends south of the border are having some cringe moment conversations lately around racial and ethical issues. And today's guest she knows all about how to have successful Cringe Moment Conversations. And I'm so excited for you to meet her. But for those who haven't met me before, I'm Lorraine LaPointe. I'm host of the show Edge of Fulfillment. And I confess that recently I had a cringe moment conversation, and it went really sideways. It went really badly. Now, I know it was because I broke the golden rule. And I jumped into the conversation right at that moment when I was explosively angry. And it's amazing how your prefrontal cortex of your brain, it just gets flooded with adrenaline. And suddenly I found myself exploding from the weeds like a lion going after a gazelle. And when we're driven to act compulsively from that place of anger, we sometimes make massive leaps of logic. And sometimes we invariably end up holding like a big stinking pile of doo-doo, which, is not great for you and not great for the person who you're talking to either. And I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear whether you're resonating with this. Just throw a yes or yeah, I've experienced that in the chat, because I'm sure our guest, thanks Angeline, good morning to you too. Yeah. And I'm sure our guest can confirm that cringe moment conversations tend to happen when we find ourselves at the junction of two human needs, vital human needs. And those are the need to be accepted and respected as we are in that moment, and the need to have something change or grow. I was very lucky because my experiences as a teacher and a principal for 30 years in education, as well as my training as a mindset fitness coach, I could call upon that. So that could help me take a step back. I managed to find my center again and connect with my wise inner self so I could clarify my thinking. And after calming my mind and refocusing my thoughts, and examining what I was believing at the time, it took me a few days, but I was able to apologize. I was able to ask for an opportunity to have a second conversation, and one from a place of more integrity, more, care. So it was important that I faced that cringe moment conversation with the intention of ensuring that the other person, who felt very much like prey, could be seen and heard, because she had some interesting observations and feelings as well. And she graciously allowed me the opportunity to step back into flow and reestablish the balance and the care within the relationship. And so a cringe moment conversation doesn't have to end a relationship, but they do need to be dealt with carefully. For years, kindness and learning and growing is what my life has really been all about, both in education and now as a coach therapist. And that's why I show compassionate, service-minded women how to transform thoughts and feelings and belief so they can shift their mindset and their focus. And the transformation means reassessing our needs so that we can feel fulfilled. Yeah, thanks, Angeline. Yeah, some of those moments, those conversations are really difficult. And when we transform our thoughts and our beliefs and our feelings, we get to meet our needs and feel a little more fulfilled. We can discover ways to live more purposefully, and that's my goal in the second part of my life. And research has proven that as we shift our perspective, we create mindset that helps improve both our perspective and our well-being. If I wasn't able to step into that mindset fitness and use those PQ reps, that positive intelligence that I have been building over the last few years, I might not have been able to reach that inner core quite so easily, that wise inner self. In fact, this is why I reach out each week through interactive radio and talk for TV programs, because whether you're here live or you come across us later on, I want to connect with you. I want to hear what you have to say. I want you to help me shape this program into something that's really, really beneficial to you. And to all those who are listening and watching, because each week we broadcast in all kinds of places through different social media and different platforms. And, and anything that you find interesting in the conversation, be sure to let us know. And each week also here on the Edge of Fulfillment, we show up on the Head Heart Synergy Facebook fan page. And we also show up on W4WN.com, which is the Women for Women Network Radio, and Talk for TV. And we run a contest for some amazing prizes. So today our guest has actually offered 2 prizes in our contest. She'll provide 2 different people 30-minute conversations or consultations on how to navigate cringe moment conversations. And to be entered into the contest to win, all you do is listen throughout the broadcast for the 5 inspirational words, and then we'll ask you to put all 5 words in the chat or in the email at the end. And I want to congratulate Dana Lynn Freeman, who had all 5 words from last week. She's the winner of Ignite Your Life for Greatness. And will be rewarded with a Lit for Life journal from last week's guest, Lexley Overton. So thank you, Lexley, and congratulations, Dana Lynn. And I know that you will love that Lit for Life journal. So I wonder, is it your turn this week? You can enter to win by simply remembering to jot down the words and putting them in the chat when asked at the end of the show. So today, you've already heard the first word, so keep track of this one. The first word to write down is reward. So as Dana Lynn earned that reward, reward is our first word. And we're going to take a little short break. So go ahead right now and send an invitation out to friends and family who could also benefit from exploring how to shine in a cringe moment conversation. And really, who couldn't use that, right? Invite them to join us here on the Edge of Fulfillment on the Head Heart Synergy Facebook page or on W4WN.com, which is the Women for Women Network Radio, or Talk for TV. And stay tuned. We will be right back.
Did you know video is the future on content? There are 3 good reasons why video is the future of content. Number 1, videos are often more engaging than simple pictures or music alone. Number 2, it's much easier to tell your story through video. Number 3, because we love to watch video, they go viral much faster. Hey, notice you're still watching right now. See how well it works. Next time we can play your video here instead. Ask me how. Shine online on Talk 4 TV and W4WN Radio.
Hey, are you looking for a brighter future? Wishing for greater calm, clarity, and confidence? What if you knew an inside job was the answer? Your mission: stop the inner burn. Gain mental fitness so you get more out of life. Imagine in about 15 minutes a day for just 6 weeks. Come on, we'll show you how. Don't miss it. Just go to www.lorraine.gives/M-Fitness and join us right now.
And welcome back. And I do have a little bit of news. It looks like our guest at the moment is having a little bit of trouble connecting with us. So let me do a quick recap. Our contest for this week, our guest was providing 2 lucky winners coaching sessions. And so if she's not able to make it, then I'm happy to offer those 2 sessions instead. So please continue to listen for the 5 words throughout the show. And as a reminder, we've already heard the first word, and the first word was the word reward. Good morning, Sherry. Lovely to have you here too. So I wonder, when was the last time that you had a cringe moment conversation? One of those conversations where you gotta dig deep. You gotta go within, and you really want to have a conversation that connects with another. And if we have those conversations like I did in the moment of anger, or the moment of frustration, or when we're feeling really strongly attached to our position in life, like our position on something, then the conversation tends not to go very smoothly. But if we can prepare for those conversations, then they tend to have a much better outcome than when we're just reacting as opposed to responding. And reacting is always something that you regret. I have yet to have a conversation where I've reacted to someone that I don't regret and think afterwards, that ruminating on the thoughts of, oh, I should have said this, or I could have said it this way, or I hope I didn't offend them, or that sort of feeling, that regret feeling. And so that's what Rachel Schaming, our guest, is really passionate about, is helping us to know how to have those conversations. In fact, she supports people to navigate through conflict. And while others run from difficult scenes, she's eager to lean into the situation, and she helps to unpack each opportunity and what to do in the first 5 minutes of a conversation, how to navigate high emotions. And anyway, I'm just going to bring her on because apparently we have managed to get her in the studio. So welcome, Rachel. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. It's delightful to be here.
Awesome. And I know sometimes our technology just doesn't want to cooperate as we want it to.
Isn't that the truth? But the thing is to persevere.
That's true. And sometimes it just you have to shut it all off and start again.
That's true. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. So I understand that quite recently you started a business, and that many would be amazed to discover the story about you starting that business. Are you willing to share a little bit about that with us?
Of course, Lorraine. Most people do not start a business in the middle of a pandemic, just after their 80th birthday, but
that was an 8 and a 0. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. As in 8 decades. Yes. Wow. So I was coming to the end of a corporate contract in a university, and I thought, I really want to do something else. I'm not quite done yet. So I really wanted to focus on supporting leaders in facing and leadership teams in facing difficult decisions and difficult conversations. In my work experience over these decades, I have seen really fine CEOs and COOs struggle mightily with a conversation, perhaps giving some constructive feedback, perhaps a termination conversation. Those are always really, really tough, fraught with a lot of emotion. Perhaps it's a downsizing in an organization. These things are brutally painful, and sometimes leaders feel they're necessary to move forward in the business. So I decided I would create this narrow niche. Rather than I work with leaders or emerging leaders, I wanted to just support them in this particular niche. So off I went last July 1st, and the rest has just unfolded. But what what I what I want your listeners and viewers to know, Lorraine, is don't give up on your dreams, your second, third, or fourth chapters. It's not too late to step out there and say, you know something, I'm not done yet. And retirement isn't all it's cracked up to be. I've retired twice and failed miserably, so I gave up on retiring.
That is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, how many people, well, I asked this question yesterday or I spoke about this question yesterday on a live. Somebody had said to me, how old is too old to start a business? Because she was in her 60s and she had said, oh, I think I'm just, like I'm just too old to start a business. And immediately thought of you, and you're so inspirational that, because I understand your business has taken off in ways that have really surprised you.
Amazingly so. I probably am more shocked than anyone else. Um, at the end of June last year, I was offered a $50,000 contract to do an HR audit in an institution. And I knew the CEO very well and really respected him. And could I do the work? Yes. But I knew that was going to keep me from stepping into my I have a friend who calls it genius work. When we follow our passion, then she calls it our genius work. Well, I have come to know, Lorraine, that she is not wrong about that when you really focus on what you're passionate about. So I turned down that contract and I thought, okay, you're 80, you're in a pandemic, and you're turning down a $50,000 contract. You have really lost it now. And
that would have gone through my mind. I must admit.
So, ironically, within a week, the same institution came back to me and said, okay, this is what I understand is your new chapter. How would this work? And so we switched away from audits, which are necessary but not my passion. And we moved over to me working with him and the leadership team about preparing for these cringe moment conversations. So I was stunned, like, oh my God, this is how it works. It seemed too easy. And I was used to, you got to work hard, the old Judeo-Christian methods of you really work hard before the fruits of your labor show up. Well, that one was just a little bit too easy. And then that contract got extended. That was a 60-day contract. And then an association that I was the president of several years ago suggested that they buy some curriculum that I had prepared about these conversations, and they paid me $100,000 for using it for a year. So I am like, oh boy, I don't understand how all of this is unfolding, but I'm getting validation, you can see, for this second chapter. So what I found was it's all about relationships. For me, it was following up with people I've worked with across the industries that I worked in over my career. And just touching base, like last year was painful for so many people. Touching base, how are you doing? How's COVID, in fact, impacted your business and your life? And the next thing you know, we're talking about what could we do together? And, but it's that one-to-one contact that I've always truly enjoyed networking and meeting with people. I think you're like that too, Lorraine. Like we never meet a stranger, and I may have taken that for granted in younger years, but not so much recently. But this whole year, I'm coming up now I'm in the 11th month of being on my own, and I have had unbelievable success, financial success. But the biggest reward has been living in my God-given purpose. The purpose. I feel I am living my why. Why am I on this earth? And I'm taking everything I've learned across the industries where I worked, NASA, New York City law firms, IT company, higher education, the medical center in Houston. all of them had very highly intellectual people running their companies, but they were lacking in the ability to navigate through these conversations.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you say that, because my focus is always being, in terms of a coach therapist, on developing your positive intelligence, which is
Yes.
IQ, how smart you are, or how
Yeah.
you are smart, with EQ, which is awareness of yourself and others. And what I'm hearing you say is that sometimes these organizations have high IQ but lower EQ. Is
Uh,
that correct?
You've got that 1000% correct, Lorraine. And what happens with these executives is when they're faced with this kind of dilemma, they begin to feel fearful. They don't want to damage the relationship. They know they're responsible for making these tough decisions. And then there is an element of shame. I should know how to do this. I
Ah,
must not be good enough because I do not know this. Well, none of us are born knowing how to do this. I didn't know either. But the fascinating thing as I thought about it was a coach friend said to me over a year ago, Rachel, when you look back over the various places where you've worked, what were you most passionate about? What just stood out? And I said, what stood out was I was always asked to come and help a CEO with these conversations. And I thought, I used to think, oh no, not again. Then I began to think of, okay, how can we make this respectful? How can we make it supportive, empathetic, and how for the messenger, but also for the person receiving the message? It's not easy to hear. You have a flaw somewhere in your work. It's not
yes.
easy to hear your job is ending or that there's a downsizing. So I began to think about what could I create that would help these leaders focus on like a 4-step process to help them. Leaders like to be prepared, of course, when they go into meetings, etc. So I came up with a 4P process. And the first P is something is happening. You have to make a decision or have a conversation. The first thing to do is pause. And in that pause, you are
Mm.
thinking about, what am I feeling? What is my intention for this conversation? Is my intention to humiliate and belittle this person? If so, better stay in the pause a lot longer.
Stay
But
in the pause until you change into
until
something.
you shift. But getting clear about, I am feeling anxious, I'm feeling fearful, and what do I want for this other person? Or do I want them to have dignity? Do I want them to have grace? So I'm thinking through that, and it doesn't take forever. It takes a little longer initially when you're learning the 4 steps. The second P is about, I am now planning. I'm planning on, how do I want to open this conversation? Perhaps it's as simple as, I want to, Lorraine, I need to bring to your attention XYZ. And I want to partner with you as we work this through. I know we'll be able to get to a workable solution. So I'm indicating, I'm sitting beside you, walking beside you. I am not. You better shape up and start getting to work on time, or else, which is threatening. And most people wouldn't respond well to that.
So I
So
hear it, pause and prepare.
that's it.
I,
Yes.
yeah, and I love this because I'm immediately transferring this in my mind to personal relationships as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you.
I've had CEOs say, this stuff works with your teenager or with your spouse. And I said,
Ah,
isn't that amazing? I
there are
I
people
actually
too.
was. So
Well, I don't know if you heard at the beginning of the top of the show. I admitted that lately I've had a cringe moment conversation that did not go well.
oh no.
And the reason it did not go well is I stepped into the conversation. I did not pause and I did not prepare. I went into the conversation from the heat of my anger. And I literally exploded on this other person like a lion exploding on a gazelle. And
Yes.
yeah, and it did not go well.
Well, Lorraine, it's in that pause where we feel a lot of anxiety. We may feel anger and hurt, and it's
Mhm.
tough. It's very tough to pause and just be with those emotions, and to think about what is it about this situation that is causing me to feel hurt. Not the other person causing the hurt. I'm choosing to feel that because of whatever is going on. And so then I get through the analysis of the emotions. Now I'm planning, how do I want this conversation to go truly? Do I want to come out on the other side with we have mutual respect, we can move
Mhm.
forward? Or if the person's leaving the organization, do I want them to go out with their skin intact or bleeding profusely? And I
Yeah.
have found that when you pause and you really get a handle on your emotions, even intense anger, as you know, will abate if we just give it time. It's not comfortable. No, never is it comfortable. So, and I tell these executives, when you have these conversations, you are never going to feel comfortable. When you do feel comfortable, it's probably time to hang it up, because it's we're talking about another person and me. So, and by the way, we don't feel these cringes if we're not if we don't have a relationship. For instance, if in a
Mhm.
restaurant you order chicken and they bring you a steak, you're probably not going to have a major meltdown. Although we've seen some meltdowns with the current COVID business, but you're going to just say, I ordered the chicken. Thank you. If you could exchange that. So we're pausing, we're planning how we want this to be. And the next piece is about preparing. And that's when I suggest a script with bullet points. You don't have to write out every word. And in the script, you are making the point of how you want to start. I always start with the word I, because I am owning what I'm about to say. I need to bring to your attention, or I want to discuss this with you. So instead of you, as we know, is a defensive word when we're in these kinds of situations. I'm also preparing, like, where are we going to have this conversation? What time? What day? And I'm thinking about what's on this person's plate. If they are incredibly
Mhm.
busy in the early afternoon, I probably would choose late afternoon, like just before the end of the day, or sometimes just before lunchtime. So there's a period of non work right after the conversation.
Right.
So now we have our script, we paused, we planned, and now we are participating in the conversation. And I start with the I statement, and then I pause again, and let the other person respond. Like, say we were talking about someone's tardiness and arriving at work, and they start saying, say it's you, Lorraine, I'm bringing to your attention about the tardiness, and you say, well, John isn't so hot either. He gets here later than I do. So
Deflect, deflect, deflect.
yes, let's get this off of me fast. So I might say, I hear your concern. Right now, we're talking about your arrival times. So let's get a handle on that. And so I'm using partnering kinds of language. And then before we exit the conversation, we agree on who's going to do what as we exit the conversation. Now, if it's a termination, you would be telling the person about whatever the package is that they're receiving before they leave the company, and about resources. And if it's termination, I put everything in writing, because I've found through the years, when you tell someone their job is ending, they don't hear another thing after I'm out of the family. That's it. They just so if it's in writing, they can refer to it when they get home and after they've had time to digest what happened. Another thing to think about with these conversations, I always have a box of tissue and water, a bottle of water. And if they start to escalate, like you feel like you might be losing control, or you see the other person's very defensive, I might say, let's take a time out. Let's take 10 minutes and get something to drink, something to eat, and we'll come back and we'll move forward. So I have found that by teaching these executives the 4 Ps, they are not comfortable, but they're much more confident that they have the competencies to move through the conversation. So, yep, the 4 Ps. That's it. That's how I navigate these conversations.
That is awesome, and I see so many parallels to our own families and friends and that kind of thing for these types of, and they don't happen all the time, but when they do, you certainly want to be prepared for them. So
Absolutely. Well, and
sorry, I was going to say, I gave the first word today as our word of the day. Our special words of the day was reward.
yes.
And I'd like to give our listeners and our watchers another word. And our another word, actually, I'm going to give them 2. Cringe and conversation, because we've talked about both.
Yes.
Yeah, and so jot those 3 down now that you've heard: reward, cringe, and conversation. So in the situation which I faced, I of course spoke very very much from anger, did not go well, and then I turned it around and I followed those 4 Ps. I took some time to pause. I also took some time to, and the second P was prepare.
Yes. Yes.
Prepare.
Plan the planning and the preparing. In one, you are thinking about how you want, and plan. You're thinking about how you want the conversation to go. What is the outcome that would be ideal? There's no guarantee, of course, but the outcome you aspire to. And then the prepare is when you're working on that script. And
I love the partnering piece too.
Yes,
See
I
yourself beside someone as opposed to across from them or opposed to them.
And a very good point, Lorraine. When I'm in these conversations, I prefer to be in a small conference room, not in an office where the CEO is behind the desk and everybody else is lined up in front of the desk, but even a round table or no table, so that it flattens the hierarchy, so that we are truly equal. One thing about Zoom is we're all in our own little squares, and none are bigger than others. And interestingly, you can do this over Zoom if required. And back a few months ago, that was the choice. We just couldn't get together in person. But I really work with execs. It's in those first 2 Ps where you are really calming your own emotions and really thinking about how you want this conversation to go.
Yeah, and so that reminds me of another P word, which is also one of our words today, which is presence.
Yes, absolutely.
So, am I hearing that? Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, you are, Lorraine.
The first 2 things are creating your presence.
And yes, that is exactly right. And presence is so important. I mean, I'm speaking to the choir here with you, that when I am in front of someone, yes, it may feel really tense because it's something maybe a bit awkward. I don't want to do it. I prefer not to do it. But what happens if I give my full presence and I am really listening to this other person when they are telling me their side of the situation? Then I am really listening for opportunities. What's the opportunity here? I might actually hear something that I didn't know about. For instance, with the tardy employee, they may be telling me they have a parent whose health is in decline, and they are struggling to find adequate care for that person, the parent, in the morning. Now we're going to shift to a different type of conversation. We're not going to be talking about tardiness. We're going to be talking about, let's talk about some resources for you. So if I were just blundering through and reading my script and not dusting my hands off so I could get out of the room, I'm not being present. And so I start the conversation for, thank you for coming. There's something important I want to talk with you about. So I set the tone. I don't get into how was your vacation? What did you do over Memorial Day? Because the person is already anxious. And
Right.
another little tip, if you're in the work world and you're setting these appointments up, I don't schedule them like in 24 hours, I want to meet with you to talk about a transgression. Can you imagine what would happen over the
Oh,
24-hour period? I would say something pretty generic, like I'd like to touch base or catch up, something pretty general. And I make it a very tight timeline, not multi hours between, because people tend to get anxious, like, well, what specifically is this about? But I definitely don't blurt it out at that point over the telephone or email what we're going to be talking about. So,
yeah,
so
'cause that
presence
that
is so
creates risk, right? And
yes,
that's actually our fifth word. So we've had all five at the
yes,
moment. Yeah, when you create risk for someone. So our five, just so that our listeners have got them, are reward, cringe, conversation, presence, and risk. But
yeah,
yeah, if someone feels at risk, then they're already going in defensive, right? They're already, their heckles are up, and it's a harder
yes.
conversation.
Defensiveness, as we know, is about self-protection. And if I am suddenly feeling exposed and vulnerable, I'm really not at my best. So as the messenger, it's really important to understand that's could be happening with the person on the other side. It's very rare when someone says, "Oh, thank you so much for bringing this flaw to my attention." It's hard to receive that type of feedback. I've progressed in, well, 80 years. I should have learned a tip or two along the way.
I was just going to say, you are in the perfect time of your life to be doing this because you've learned so much.
Well, I think, Lorraine, you're absolutely right. At 20, I did not have the life experiences that I've had across these industries through my career, nor did I appreciate them as I was going along. It was usually like, oh, no, not again. It was only in the last probably 10, 15 years that I was like, I can really help people with this. And I see the pain. I just don't like people to have to suffer unnecessarily. And so when I started talking about cringe moment conversations, that like, oh no, we kind of cower when we hear that term, but that we can learn a 4-step process, and we can come out of on the other side with relief, respect, and a pathway forward. And that's the key thing. Often these executives, the reason they are avoiding it is fear that things are going to get out of hand and get much worse. So I will ask them, what is the risk of not doing this? Well, I'll be viewed as an ineffective leader. The situation will continue. It will get worse. So the risk is far worse. Then what about if we prepare and we get ready, and then we practice before you go into the situation? Well, and they might say, well, how about you do the conversation for me? And I've had that one
Oh,
happen so frequently. And I
I'm sorry, I
believe,
don't mean to laugh because obviously it does happen.
let me delegate this one to you. You're so good at this. Let me delegate. So what I tell them is, so how would it be viewed if this is your direct report, CEO, and now I am in as an outsider and I'm saying, I need to bring to your attention that this is going on. I have no direct insight into that situation. How might they view you? Oh, you mean they think I was a coward and wimped out? Something along that line. Yes.
And the truth would be,
Yes, the truth would be. But it's so awesome to me to see. It doesn't take too long for them to see, oh, okay, I'm not going to be comfortable, but I can have this conversation. And so when they're in the participating in the conversation, I really work with them about don't be sitting thinking of your rebuttal. Think about really listening to the person. And if there's something that is upsetting, as we said, you can take a time out, or you can even say, I need time to reflect on what you've said, and then we will reconnect for sure. Because you may learn something in that conversation that you really do need to think about. But
Yeah,
it's
this advice is just so amazing, because I mean, I just keep transferring it to home. Sometimes we think
yes.
with our spouse or our children or our parents, we have to have the conversation and it all has to happen now. But sometimes you get extra pieces of information that you weren't aware of, and you need to digest those. You need to step back and have
And,
another thought.
and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
those family relationships can really trigger emotions, and often those may be we're being accused about something. We are blamed in some way, and
yeah.
that's hard to hear, and to say, let me take some time to think about this. And where the defense may be triggered is there may be an element of truth to what the person is saying. Ouch, but I might
Ouch.
need to hear it.
Yeah.
I might.
And cringeworthy conversations go both ways. They too
Yes.
might be cringing about what they have to tell you. It's not
Yes.
just the cringing happens just on one side. So I love the fact that Roxy, thank you so much for putting Rachel's contact information there. Rachel, we're unfortunately running out of time. I love talking with you, and thank you for those wonderful tips. The 4 Ps about how to have a cringe moment conversation. And people can reach you at Rachel at cringemomentconversations.com, or there's your Facebook link. And thank you also for being here today and for providing for our listeners and viewers opportunities to win an opportunity to talk to you one-on-one, because you are a wealth of information, knowledge, and so compassionate. I just love it.
This has been a joy and a pleasure. I really have enjoyed, and you can see I'm a little bit passionate about this topic, but that's okay.
Passion is good, whether, and if you
Yes.
can't be passionate when you're starting a business at age 80, when can you be passionate?
Yes. And
So thank you so much for being here on the Edge of Fulfillment today. And we're here every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern on Head Heart Synergy Facebook fan page, or the W4WN.com, which is Women for Women Network Radio and Talk for TV. Our 5 special words to throw in the chat to be eligible for the prize this week are cringe, conversation, risk, reward, and present. So go ahead and throw those in the chat. And I'd like to, if anyone hasn't joined our Facebook group called Mindfully Moving Forward, you're more than welcome to continue the chat in that Facebook group. Or you can, the other thing that you can do with the 5 words, just, I don't think I've given you my email, but you can send them to support@headheartsynergy.com. Put the word contest as a subject line so it sticks out. And again, I want to thank our guest today for being here, Rachel Schaming. And I am your host, Lorraine LaPointe of Head Heart Synergy, reminding you that at the edge of fulfillment, we always have a choice. We can stay on the edge and always get what we've always got, or we can become courageous and have cringe moment conversations that work out really well, so we move beyond the edge to get what we really want. I'll see you next week.